Alright, so my name is Rik Deihs. I'm actually APA member and an ABA member, and also the superintendent for the Hamburg Club of North America. And today, this video is mostly for youth exhibitors and 4-H groups and big mouth cockbirds. Yeah, and I wanted to give kind of a brief, introduction to the Hamburg breed. Now, all I personally have here to show you are silver spangled variety and golden spangled variety, both in bantams. All I breed are the bantam variety. But today I'm not going to try and get too detailed on anything, but I am going to give kind of brief explanations on different things that I can point out to you. I actually have a couple culls here as well, that are birds, as you may know, a cull is a bird that would be disqualified from a show or is just undesirable for different defects, if not disqualificating marks. So anyhow, a brief thing about Hamburgs is generally they are a shy, kind of flighty breed, but they do tame pretty easily. It does take some getting used to. As you'll probably see, some of the birds I'm going to pull out today will probably fight and flap around, and then other ones will just sit nicely in my hand. The ones that are sitting nicely in my hand are used to being shown and being handled a lot more often. So also, I guess we go ahead and get started. First thing I wanted to show you, we'll pull out over here, is a golden spangled. Get him good here. Alright, now you can see here with the golden spangled, he's got his wing bar visible. Should have two here and then one going down here. Now, most of us just refer to this as the ladder or the stairs. But it is, crucial to a complete wing bar. Now, the thing about the gold spangles are, and you'll see a lot of this, is light coloring, if not white, in the feathering. Now, in most cases, people took gold spangles at some point and bred them with silver spangles, trying to increase the quality of spangling. Is generally the most common reason for seeing this, and it's almost in every line that I've come across. It's just something you breed out. Now, this is a cockbird that was bred last year. So he's right about a year old. You can see I've got most of the smut out of his tail, which, if you know your standard, the APA and ABA current standard for golden spangled Hamburgs is to have a solid black tail. The bantam varieties is not present. It never really has been recorded. I've heard of a couple cases, but I myself have never actually seen any. And I'll show you more on that on his sire, the next gold spangled I was planning on pulling out. But, as a generality, and I'll focus more on this again on other birds too, is, a good Hamburg male, you got to have those good sickle feathers coming up to the top, and then having a few extras here, is, the more or less the more that you can have here, the better. I'm sorry, and once again, we won't be editing this, so I'm kind of doing it off the cuff. So bear with me. So anyway, and then obviously, you got the slate legs, and I mean, for all these details, I strongly recommend referring to your standard of perfection, either your APA, American Standard of Perfection, or your ABA standard. You see there with him walking out, that tail really opens up. His wing carriage could be a little nicer. Be more up here would be more preferred. Alright, now we'll go over here. Now this is a 2-year-old cockbird, and he's actually the other one's sire, so that would mean it's his father. So, yeah, I know. You fighting me? Alright, calm down, buddy. Yeah. Alright, now you can see here, you might think, oh man, that he has a black tail. Now, obviously, you can also see the brown in there underneath his sickle feathers. And here the black seems more present on this side. But when you actually look in detail, you can, and you won't be able to see it on the video, but you can see here, all these feathers have a distinct spangle in them. You can see a slight color difference, which even on a bantam, it doesn't matter if this tail is solid black. If you see a difference, to be able to determine that there's a spangled in there, that solid black is not solid black, it is now smut. So, in turn, you do not have a solid black tail, you have a smut tail with spangles. And generally speaking, that's how you find these gold spangled bantams. There are plenty of nice lines of the gold spangled large fowl that I've seen with solid black tails that fit the standard. You can also see here he's got some of that white more present. And actually white feathering in his wings, if you can see here. Okay, buddy. Yeah, you don't like that. There you go. So, but as you can see from the next generation, that can be bred out. It's a process. Yeah. So he's been a good sport, so we're going to put him back up. So you get a nice shot of him in there. Let him show off a little bit now that he's all worked up. Alright, and since we're on the golds, I was going to show one of these. Down here I got my little brooders. So, clearly he's not used to being handled. Here we got about a 6-7 week old cockerel. Now, if we can get zoomed in here on the tip of his comb right there. You can see there, well, you got everybody upset. Alright, we'll give it a second here. Oh, come on. Yep. So anyhow, you can see here with the, wow, come on. I have to feed these guys. Yeah, there you go. Alright, now, sorry about that. Alright, now if we get back to that, what I was saying is, you can already see here a double leader forming, which is 2 spikes coming off the back of his comb. And I forgot to point that out, but that is a common thing with any rose comb, is that it's supposed to have the single leader, which is just a point or a spike coming off of the back of the comb. Now, angle and everything, is obviously, in your standard, exactly how it should be, coming off of the comb. But with this, that is a disqualifying mark. And if you breed this, you are going to make this so prolific in your line that it's going to be hard to get it out. Any male or any female like this is a call. Do not breed it. So. Alright, now we'll go over here, and since we're on the subject of calls, we have here a silver spangled male, and this is, I breed 2 separate lines, 2 different bloodlines of silver spangled hamburgs. The second line I created by mixing my primary line with another line that I brought in. So this is kind of a project line that I'm working on, trying to see what I can get differently. And as for breeding, it breeds more as a female line, they would say, versus where my primary line that I show is more primarily a male line, which would mean I'm getting more good males more often than I get those amazing females. It doesn't mean that I'm not getting good birds out of my females, it just means my males are typically just a little nicer than, I guess on an average. Where this line, the females are looking a lot nicer than the males. So anyhow, this male I consider to be a call. I did cover this in a short video that I shared online a while back. But you can see with this male, now a silver spangled and even a golden spangled should not have black on their head. And you can see all this black that's on his head. And this bird's about 7 months old. And at this age, it should probably still be a little bit visible, but not to this level. Like, that's not going to fade out. And having black on the head is not a disqualifying mark, but it is a defect. And then also, he's just too black in general. Like, and what I mean by that is, you know, the color kind of all runs together. And in certain areas, he's getting solid black and streaked feathers. And you can see in the saddle area, you know, like that. Down in the saddle area here, he's got almost solid black. And that's just going to be terrible for breeding. If you try and breed this, you're going to have a lot of problems with your coloring. And like I said, that's just... And this is simply a call based on coloring. His comb, his earlobes, and his wattles are all fine. His comb's a little too big, but that's not a major issue. And his sickle feathers are actually nicer than the bird that I'm using to breed with. But with just the coloring in general, he's considered a call in my opinion. And I would not recommend breeding a bird that looked like this, or forbid anything worse than that. Now I'll show you here is actually his brother, and they were hatched from the same sire, possibly different mothers. I only keep track of sires when I'm breeding. I kind of just throw them in with the females as, you know, I kind of pair them up, and I don't necessarily keep tight track of that because sometimes the females will bounce around a little bit during my hatching seasons. So anyhow, this is the brother of him. I will actually be breeding him. Now, his sickle feathers and his saddle area are not nearly as thick. They're the exact same age, like I said, same sire. But you can see the coloring difference. And he's molting a little bit right now. So, but his wing bar was more intact. But there is not, it's not necessarily a solid, definitive bar on his ladder, as we called it earlier, as I referred to it. And I mean, it's there and it's present, but you can see the breaks in it. And this side appears to be growing in better. But overall coloring, he has a much more desirable color. The black on his head is very limited, and I said this amount of black on his head, that will grow out. That'll fade out. When he's a year-old cockbird, his head should be solid white, based off of what I've seen before. Nothing's a guarantee. And yes, he should have these little bit of blacks, a little bit of black specks or streaks in his heckle feathers here. And the standard calls for an all-white head, but the head generally stops about even with the lobes, the skull. That is the head. The rest is his neck, obviously. So, now his tail isn't nearly as thick, the sickles aren't as nice, but this coloring is going to overall benefit the line. And his comb is also smaller, which won't hurt, but his leader is a little misshapen. You can kind of see it hooks. But overall, he's about the best I hatched out of this line for males. The females are actually pretty darn nice. And I'll show one of her out so you can see her. And maybe you can kind of see the difference once I also show you the males from my other line, what I meant more about a male and female line. So here is a female from that same line. She's right about the same age, I think a little bit younger. She's about 6 months old. And she's actually the one I consider to be currently the best bird in this line. The best hamburg for this secondary line that I work on. So you can see here, she's got a nice defined wing bar. Good separation. Could be a little bit more defined over here, but this side I've really liked that. And still see the separation in the ladder there. And this side's not as bad. And you'll have these differences. I mean, they're not a mirror. And the girls are allowed to have black on their head. I can't remember the percentage offhand. Once again, you know, please refer to your standards. But as you can see, I mean, she's got a nice little comb on her, nice little head on her. And my main priority when I'm breeding these birds, personally, and other breeders have their own preferences. Me, it's a good head. They don't have this nice skull. And hers could be a little more defined, but I like to point out about how the skull should almost have a divot for the comb to sit in, where the eye sockets, the eye sockets should almost bulge over with the skull. Kind of, for lack of a better explanation, kind of like a pit bull skull, like a pit bull dog. Have that divot right down the middle of that head. But I want a nice wide skull. Now you got to watch it. You don't want to get too wide. I mean, they're not a Brahma, but and yes, they should have a nice slender neck. So it's a fine line. And as you've seen with the coloring and stuff, that is probably one of the hardest things about breeding these birds, is keeping that nice tail and keeping the coloring right. And I've seen a lot of people get frustrated, and I've heard of even more that, you know, have tried them and given up on them. And it's a shame, because they are really beautiful birds. But you just really got to pay attention and put in the work. But when you do, it's totally worth it, in my opinion. So, like I said, she was one of the females, and that's what I said, is I think overall she's the best example of a Hamburg for this line. So we'll stick her back in there for now. Well, maybe get a look at her in there. Standing all proud. Alright, we'll put her away for now. Alright, now. Well, since we're on the females, let's show you one of these. Now, this girl here is probably, she is definitely in the running for being the best bird I have out here. She won last year at a show up in Wisconsin. It was Wisconsin International last year in a class of 83 birds. Won Rosecomb Clean-Legged Champion, which is actually probably the biggest one I've had to date. So anyhow, now you can see her. She's from my primary show line. This is a line I was fortunate enough to get into with my original starts, and have been breeding it for about 5 years now. Yeah, roughly 5 years now. Which actually isn't a terribly long time. I'm sure plenty of you watching this video have probably been breeding birds a lot longer than me. But I'm definitely, and like I'm generally telling people when it comes to the Hamburgs, is as long as you're passionate about these birds, you're going to do right with them. If you don't have the passion for them, you're going to get frustrated, and it's not going to be worth it. But to me, when I get a bird that's looking like this, and just knowing that, you know, and getting that accomplishment and getting to see this bird every day, I mean, that's makes me happy. That, and I get some eggs. But anyhow, you see her, and as I was talking about the skull, I mean, her skull is about perfect. She's got that nice divot there. Yeah, the skull, you know, makes, you know, the eye sockets, you know, are formed up. She's got that nice crease for the comb to sit in. And you can see it even going into the back of her skull. But nice wide head on her, sturdy, slim neck. I know. But, and the other thing too is, I need to make sure I point out, is on the silver spangled and golden spangled hamburgs. Now, the standard will say that every spangled should be a V shape with a rounded edge. Me and everyone else will probably explain it to you as they should be a perfect teardrop. These are not polka dots. They are not splashes. They are each one. And I can actually show you here. That's about a perfect example there. If I can get it. There we go. You see this one right here? That's almost nice and clean. Perfect example of, that's what they're talking about with a V and a rounded edge, or as a perfect teardrop. And every one of these should be that way. Now, some of these are more rounded, and that's where you run into being perfection. And even her, she's got a little bit of breakage in her ladder, but when it forms up, it's solid. Alright, well, thanks for playing. We'll put her back up. Come over here and we'll get a little shot of her walking around. Now, all these birds are molting a little bit, but as you can see there too is the perch. That is, paramount for really any bird that you're going to plan on having in a cage for a long period of time. Otherwise, those wings are really going to start to sag. They need plenty of room to work those wings. But with the hamburgs too, especially the males, the tail, you'll never keep it clean, and it won't grow in and stay grown in properly without proper clearance and a proper perch. So we'll put her away. Here we got just a younger female. She's, I don't even know, I'd have to stop and think. She hatched in January. Yeah. Okay, so that'd make her about 4 months old, because it's April now, late April, almost 5 months old. You can see most of her chick feathers, you would say, young adult feathers, and she's getting her juvenile feathers in now. You can see how clean that color is. And generally speaking, a hamburg will show better as a pullet and a cockerel as a juvenile than they will as a full-grown adult. Now, this is generality. I have some birds that full-grown, they're still beautiful birds, but generally the younger ones will outshow them. But you can see her coloring's coming in nice and clean and crisp. That black is nice. The only worry I have with her is that maybe she might end up too black because of how defined that black is. But there's no way of knowing. Hamburgs are a real tricky breed. If you get rid of a bird before it's 6 or 7 months, you're going to have no idea what you just got rid of. They will change so much, you won't believe it until you've hatched a few and you see it yourself. Generally speaking, that's why I will not sell birds under 6 or 7 months. In rare cases I do, it's just I don't have the room for them anymore, so I need to unload a few. Alright, I'm doing that, girl. I want to get off my hand. So, alright, we covered most of those, so let's go over here. We got an older pair. This is actually a 6-year-old hen. Well, about 5.5-year-old hen. She's actually one of my first hamburg hens that I started with. So she's one of my original starts. Now you can actually see here her lack of leader. She has one, but it's a real minimal comb and a very small leader. But my original birds had larger combs than I would have liked. And that's the thing with getting starts, is I bought from a great gene pool. I didn't expect great birds, at least not what I paid for them. And those of you willing to pay, top dollar, you can get, champion birds off the bat in a lot of cases. So anyhow, not the point. So with her, And she's molting a little bit right now, but you can see here she's got that broken ladder. And this one's got a little more feathers still on it. We'll look at that one. And you see the coloring's broken and stuff. But every one of these is pretty well defined. She had good coloring, and still does, obviously. And she's an older hen, and she's kept this nice coloring. And with her still laying and still breeding, now she only gives me a couple eggs a week at best, but she's still laying, so I want to breed from this bird as much as possible. Because at her age and still laying and still holding fertility, that's a good sign of lasting fertility. And hamburgs, that is actually something that the original breed and the large fowl breeds were known for, is their lasting fertility and being able to lay all year round. They're just prolific layers. So that's something that I'm working more on with my bantams, and definitely want to promote that. So yeah, if you have an older hen, and that's any breed, but so if you have any older hens out there, I recommend, keeping them, breeding them, as long as they're worth breeding. And she's one that stood the test of time. None of my other start birds are still here except for her. All right, I know. Now, this male is a 2-year-old cockbird from my primary line. And like I said, everybody's molting a little bit, so, but you can see here, his head is primarily white. He's got some black on the back of his head, but it's hardly present. Nice, solid white earlobes. Wattles could be a little bit better. Maybe hang a little loose here in the back, but comb's a little big, but overall this bird's a nice specimen. And I also got to figure he's 2 years old, so that comb's quite a bit bigger than when he was shown as a cockbird. But you can see this nice full tail. Now his sickles aren't quite as long and as nice as they should be. You can see a little bit of smut in the tail, perhaps. But yes, there is a little bit of smut present. Now the thing is almost every hamburg is going to have smut on the inside of the tail. And if you don't have a little bit of smut on the inside of your tail, your coloring is probably actually going to suffer from this. It almost requires that little bit of smut to ensure that nice clean black in the spangling. But you should not be able to see any of it from the outside. And the hen I showed earlier, the one I mentioned had won the champion placing. She's this way. She's got a couple streaks on the inside, but none is visible on the outside of hers. And as you can see here, he's got a nice, he's not fighting me, a nice defined wing bar. Like I say, he's molting a little bit, so it's not as, let me look over here, actually it looks a little nicer. But up here he lost the ladder. Over here he's got it. Like I said, he's molting out. But you see the tail, the sickle feathers in there, and like I said, all this is basic requirement for the hamburgs. And my main focus is, like I've mentioned more than once already, is the skull, that head shape. And you can see that male, he's got the nice bulging eye sockets with that good strong divot for that comb to rest in. And then the second thing I worry about is this wing bar. And then my third priority is the tail, a nice full tail. And I've yet to find a judge to disagree with me. I'm sure other people have other opinions and other people breed for other things. But in my opinion, the three things that stand out on these birds the most is the head, the wing bar, and the tail. I notice those more than, first thing. I notice those before I notice body type. And those things stand out to me from across the room. So those are the things that I personally, as a breeder, focus on. So I'm going to put him back up. There you go, buddy. Oh, get a nice little shot of him and his girlfriend in there. See him strutting his stuff. He's all proud. I'll move it along here. And now this one here, we'll get a shot of him in here before we take him out, because he's looking pretty good. Oh, no, he's all tensed up. Okay, now this bird, we'll take him out and we'll see how he does. Come here, guy. No, come here, buddy. Don't fight me. Alright. So, this guy, now, I still, to this day, feel bad about it, but he found an error in one of my constructions. There was a gap, literally about that big around, in ventilation in one of my cages that I built in a lean-to, and he was managed to squeeze through and got attacked by a older male. And this guy got pampered for a few weeks. Thought we were going to lose him. But anyhow, his genetics are awesome. So this guy is being bred. And you can see how full these sickles are and how long these sickles are. This is, in my opinion, amazing and ideal. And this bird, I will breed him until the day he dies or runs out of fertility. And he will be pampered every step of the way because I still feel bad for this little guy. He had it pretty rough for at least a week. And we call him Scar now because he's got scarred up earlobes and comb and a little bald spot on the back of his head. But his lobes were absolutely perfect until, unfortunately, this happened. And that is the second biggest shame, besides obviously the discomfort and the issue for the bird, is simply cosmetically he was ruined. But in turn, he gets to live out his days with the ladies. He's actually in here just for the video today. So we'll stick him back in here, see if he'll strut his stuff a little bit, open up that tail for you. Really, there he goes. Yeah, that's that good tail that I'm talking about. That's what I'm really after when it comes to my males. Alright, so it looks like the battery's gonna die on the phone. So anyhow, that's really about it as a generalization. I tried to make just this video just kind of to help out anybody who just wanted to get just a kind of an introduction to hamburgs. I kind of imagined what I would say to somebody who came out to my house and said, "Hey, oh, you have hamburgs? Tell me about those." So hopefully I didn't, get too off track and you found this useful. Anyhow, I guess everybody stay safe. Hope everybody's watching this in good health and has a good year going into 2020. And hopefully we get some shows this year and hopefully I get to see some of you there. Alrighty, well, take care and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.